Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Entrepreneurship Matters. My name is Alicia Wilson. I'm Vice President for Economic Development for Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins Health System. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this conversation with two of the financial planning entrepreneurs, the best in the country. So this is a rare treat. Let me introduce and invite Sherrell Martin and Antwone Harris on to the screen. I'm going to give their bios and tell you all about them, and then we're going to launch right into a conversation. So we know that successful entrepreneurs, successful businesses are not built in a day. It takes a long-term commitment, multiple failures, a lot of grit to make it happen. And Antwone and Sherrell are no different. We started this conversation over almost 2 years ago. We featured hundreds of entrepreneurs. I think you are our first in the financial planning domain, so this is great. And I'm going to give their bios. We're going to launch right into the conversation today. We know they're very busy. The market is volatile today, as it is every day, but we are thankful for their time. So let me first introduce you to Sherrell Martin. She is the founder, CEO, and tech-savvy cloud accountant at Nitro Financial Solutions, an award-winning financial management and consulting practice. She supports business owners with managing the financial health of their business by providing outsourced accounting services. Let me tell you, you are, everybody has asked about this on here. Using accounting, bookkeeping, and consulting, she and her team help their clients find the money leaks, increase their cash flow, and maximize their profits. She has over 25 years of experience in public accounting and corporate finance and decided to start her own bookkeeping business to help businesses manage their finances so they can create wealth and legacy. She is the founder of Rock the Books Online. I love that. A Goldman Sachs 10KSB alum, an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor, certified Zero partner, top 50 cloud accountant by HubDoc, and member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. That is amazing. Welcome, Sherrell, on this week's edition. And next, let me introduce you to Antwone Harris of Platinum Bridge Wealth Strategies. As the Chief Planning Strategist with Platinum Bridge Wealth Strategies since 2017, Antwone acts as a fiduciary to help manage, grow, and protect the assets of institutions and the retirement income of individuals. You're going to be busy after this too. Over the past 18 years, he has helped clients navigate through many difficult market environments, including the technology crisis, the 2008 housing crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, and we probably have another crisis that started today. So he is ready. He stays ready for to help clients. Prior to launching Platinum Bridge Wealth Strategies, he was vice president and senior financial consultant for the Charles Schwab Corporation. He has managed over $890 million in assets while helping clients strategize and execute comprehensive financial plans. He is a proud MBA graduate of Georgetown University and received his bachelor's from the University of Maryland and has obtained his CFP and RICP certifications. Welcome, Antwone. Welcome, Sherrell. It's a real treat for me.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too. So I know we're going to get really into this conversation. Past couple of weeks, I've gotten so into the conversation, I have run out of time. So I'm going to tell people how they can participate in the conversation. All of you know how to do that. You can put your questions into the chat on Zoom if you're tuning in on Zoom. I know the vast majority of you are watching on Facebook. You can put your questions in the chat. Those of you who are listening on your phones, you can text your questions in 22333, type JHUWL in the message, and I'll get all those questions and weave them into the conversation. But first, I want to ask Antwone and Sherrell, and I'll start with Sherrell. What inspired you to want to be an entrepreneur?
So I started out a few years ago, back in 2009. I started working in like a direct sales company. And, you know, working in a direct sales company, you're kind of building your own business inside of a business. And I did it for about 3 or 4 years. And I loved being able to like make my own decisions and planning how to do things. And so after a few years of corporate and a few years of public, I just decided, I wanted to help other business owners kind of be successful. Working with small businesses, a lot of them fail because of poor cash management, poor accounting, just not getting what they need. And so I decided I wanted to be my own boss and kind of help other businesses do the same. And so that's kind of how I got my start. It was just a little bit of taste of doing the direct sales. I did used to do taxes back then as well. And so it was kind of like, why not?
No, I love it. So 2009, you took the leap. We're going to get into how you took the leap in just a minute. But Antwone, how about you? Why did you want to become an entrepreneur? And what inspired you?
Well, my grandparents raised me, and my grandfather was a brick mason. So, he had his own little brick masonry business, and I saw how he was able to move and kind of be his own man. So I've always had an entrepreneurial bent. I had a painting business when I was in college that I ran. And then even my first job out of college, I was a pharmaceutical rep. So I wasn't fully an entrepreneur, but I didn't have a boss over me all the time. And so I've only had a couple of jobs throughout my career where I've ever had an actual boss and an office where they were telling me what to do. And this doesn't work for me. So even as a financial advisor, when I was with Charles Schwab, it's very entrepreneurial. They kind of give you some guidance. You're working with your clients. So you're not in that kind of environment. And I've always wanted to launch my own firm. So 2017, I kind of took the leap and kind of manifested what was on my mind.
What's interesting about what both of you said, we've had so many people talk about family members who are entrepreneurs who inspired them, right? And not even in the same field. And then also realizing y'all are independent, right? You are self-driven, self-motivated. So you have a extremely specialized skill set. You have a great deal of education, but how did you go about starting your business? So you help businesses, you help individuals keep track of their money, but what steps did you go through after you realized, what, I'm going to go out on my own? How did you start that business? And that's really helpful for other budding entrepreneurs, but also some other folks who are thinking about it that are on. So Sherrell, I'll start with you and then Antwone. What were the steps you went through in 2009?
So in 2009 was when I was doing the direct sales. I didn't actually start this business until 2012. The direct sales, I got kind of tired of doing that, and and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something in my field, and so it was 2012 that I actually started. And honestly, the very first thing I did, and I didn't know back then what a coach was, or business coach, but I saw this woman who looked like me, who sounded like me, who was very successful at running a business. She wasn't in my industry, but she was very successful, and she was basically telling tips on how we could be successful, how I could have a business working for myself. And so she actually was a person that kind of inspired me to just like jump and do it. But I worked my full-time job for 11 months after when I started the business. I did not quit right away. I do not recommend that because I still needed to, I needed income. I needed to provide for my family. So I worked my full-time job, and built the business along the way. I joined networking groups. I hired a coach to help kind of teach me the things that I didn't know, because I was working with business owners as an accountant or a bookkeeper, but I wasn't running the business. So I was going off of what I was doing, which is not how you run a business. Like, that's just not the only thing to business. I was only looking at one piece of it, which a lot of business owners do, right? We look at what we do and how we do it. And it was like, oh, I can do this. And so my plan was I was going to have 20 clients. I was going to work one client a day for 20 days out of the month. And like, that was my plan. It's not the same in real life. And I learned real fast that it's not the same in real life. But, I joined networking groups to help introduced me to people in industries and people that would need my services. And that is kind of what helped me grow. It took about, financial services is an industry that builds a lot of trust. And so it takes a longer time. People go online, they see people doing social media or whatever, and they're like, oh, I want to hire them. But when you're in finance and you're dealing with people's money, they want to kind of watch you for a little bit, see what you're talking about, right? And so it took me about 9 months to get my first client, but I got 2 clients within 2 months of each other that paid my net check. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can do this. And so I decided to quit at that point, and I've been full-time ever since.
I think you dropped so many great gems in telling us your story of starting your business. The first was that you recognize that you need a coach, right? Everyone great has a coach. So you got a business coach to start out. Second thing you talked about which was your piece of advice warning, that you worked your full-time job as you built your business until your business could become your full-time employment. And so those 11 months where you started your business, you built your business, you joined networking groups to introduce you to potential clients. And then after 9 months was able to have 2 clients that actually were able to replace your full-time paycheck. And that's when you took your leap. And so I think that's really helpful for people to understand the progression you went on. Because someone's probably like, I'm going to quit, then I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get paid. And your warning is like, deal with the finances first. That's why you're in this industry. Antwone, how about you? How did you go about starting your business?
Well, it was a process. It's a long story. I won't go through all the details, but I've always loved stocks. I always. So when I was 16, I got exposed to the stock market, but I didn't have any money. So when I graduated and I was working as a pharmaceutical rep, I got a bonus check and I was trading stock. And as I mentioned, then I went back to grad school. Then I had a regular job with a boss for only 8 months. I couldn't do it. So I just quit and started trading stocks on my own for a living. So, I mean, before I launched this business, I was already an expert as far as stock analysis, et cetera, was concerned. And I had a master's degree in finance, et cetera. So I felt like I was fully credentialed from a financial perspective. So I had a job with DirecTV at one point, and I had this vision of being a financial advisor and working with specifically African-American clients. And it was like a divine calling for me. Like, it was like God kept just saying, hey, you have this information, you didn't come up with money, you need to get this information back in your community, et cetera. And it was like a divine kind of thing. It was pretty actually spiritual. So I wrote down all these affirmations and everything, and I was afraid to quit because I had a wife and had a little girl at the time and mortgage, and I was just afraid. And then they just laid everybody off. So it was like, you're starting. So God was like, I told you what to do it. So I went out and it was a total flop. Like, I went out and just banged my head against the wall for 2 years trying to get clients. And, I didn't have the financial support that I needed, not necessarily from my wife. It was more, I didn't have the savings to support myself financially, to Sherrell's point. So I just was going through it and just stress and, challenges, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, look, I need to recalibrate. So I know that I'm qualified, but I don't really have a track record, right? I couldn't just come out and say, to Sherrell's point again, let me start managing your entire net worth because of my credentials, and you don't know me, and I don't have an established track record. So I went and worked for Charles Schwab, and I was there. I was in a corporate environment, but because of the first mistake that I had made, I didn't have enough capital on the side. I didn't have a track record that I could market, because that's what I'm marketing, right? I'm not marketing that I'm going to paint your house. I'm not marketing that I have really good food. I'm marketing something that's intangible, that you have to trust me that I can manage your money and help you do better than you would do otherwise. And I needed something in this particular business to kind of point to. So through me working in that corporate environment through Charles Schwab, I was able to establish a track record. I continued to receive accolades, et cetera. I was on television and this. So then I had something that I could point to. But the challenge became, and we could talk about this a little later, I started to get comfortable and I started to lose sight of my ultimate vision, my initial vision, because I had struggled and I was like, all right, well, now I have a good job. I'm making good money. I'm providing. I'm doing this. I'm taking my vacations. And I was at Charles Schwab for 12 years, whereas initially I had planned to be there maybe 5 years. So I kind of got off track a little bit, but then I got to a certain point where it was like, hey, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it. If not, you're not. So at that point, when I launched the business, I was much smarter. I had learned so much from the initial mistakes that I made. I had come to the table with several years of my bills paid on the side, right? I had that money on the side to pay my bills as I launched that business. And then I had a track record and I was able to be successful at this point versus my initial foray into being an entrepreneur.
No, I think I appreciate you being so candid and so thoughtful, because there's someone else out there that needed to hear what you just said. I took down 8 points. Maybe there were more. There probably were more. But first of all, you loved what you do, right? So you've always loved stocks. You've always loved so that investment return, and through your schooling, through your training, developing expertise. You also listened to the calling that you received while working in direct TV, but and was really pushed out into business and learned that there were certain things that needed to be set up before you could really launch in the way that you wanted to launch, with the capital that you wanted to be able to scale and grow your business. So really took a step back, well, not a step back, actually a step forward, went to work for a corporation, elevated your brand, elevated your profile, elevated your expertise, were able to go deep, earn the reputation to the point that you and Sherrell made, to be able to have people feel comfortable entrusting you with their money. And then we will get to the comfort of the job versus the entrepreneurship. And then after that, really went out and started on your own with all the lessons and all the capital that you needed in order to be able to scale the business. Really important points that you just made for so many. And so let's go to that. So you both took that leap. I'll start with you, Antwone, and then go to Sherrell. Sherrell took the leap after 9 months. You took the leap in actually a lot of comfort. You were at Charles Schwab. What was the critical moment when you said, I must now embark upon my own? Antwone, was there a critical moment? Was there a point in time when you were at Charles Schwab and you just realized now is the time?
The goal never left me. And like I said, that was a very truncated version of everything that happened. But I mean, I have an affirmation. I read this every night, and it's about, I wrote this affirmation when I still was working at DirecTV, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically, I'm the best and most prominent Black financial advisor in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I use my skills, talents, and blessings to do a righteous work to the honor and glorification of God. So when this was, it never left me, but I allowed myself to kind of get derailed a little bit, and it just got to the point where I had grown my business within Charles Schwab. It was a multi-million-dollar business that I was responsible for by myself. And they were making millions of dollars a year. I was receiving, they kept patting me on the back. They kept giving me awards and doing things that make me feel great. And I was like, this is pretty ridiculous. I have a unique expertise that I can leverage for myself and my family and really maximize my gifts. And I'm simply not doing it. And it just kept harping on me. And then I read a book about the end of people's lives and what happens toward the end of your life. If people in a nursing home, they interview these people and they say, tell me if you had it all to do over again, what you would do differently. And there's never a story about people saying, I wish I hadn't taken a chance and started that business, or I wish I hadn't went after that woman that I liked and asked her to marry me. it's always regret. I wish I had, but I didn't. I wish I had, but I didn't. And I said, at the time I was 45 years old. And I said, listen, I said, these years are going by. And I said, if I don't do something now, I'm going to be 60 years old, still sitting here doing the same thing, just being comfortable. I said, either I'm going to take a chance or not. So that was what happened. It was just a combination of my goals, thinking through the end of my life, and I just took the chance.
No. Beautifully said. And you're so right. You don't ever regret the things you did. It's the things you didn't, and appreciate what you just said. Sherrell, how about you? What made you take that leap? You had 2 clients. Now you realize I can replace my income, but was there something that told you this is actually the time to do it?
Honestly, burnout. If I can be real candid, working a full-time job and trying to build a business at the same time is not for the faint of heart. And so it was taking a lot out of me. I was working 60 hours a week at my job, and then I was doing my client work in the evenings. It was like a 6 to 9 thing in the evenings. I just happened to have one client who was okay with me coming to their office in the evening time. And I had my children at the time were younger, and I was doing all this stuff for this. It wasn't enough time for everything. And so it came to a point where it was like, I can only grow, I can only get to the next step if I'm in this wholeheartedly full, 100%. And so I had the conversation with my husband and was like, yeah, like this is what's about to happen, and he is 100% a supporter of me at all times. And so he was like, okay, so what's the plan if it doesn't work, right? And I was like, if it doesn't work, things happen, I'll go back and get a job. But within a few months, I was like, I am unemployable. And I say it all the time. I am unemployable. I cannot work for somebody else. I don't have it in me. I don't have even just the thought of it makes me like cringe. I'm like, no, so it has to work. So I have to do whatever it takes to make it work. And so I just got to the point where I couldn't do all of this at the same time. I could no longer, I was at the job and I was going to start making mistakes because I wasn't fully present, or I was too tired, or vice versa. Like I couldn't give the client the service that they needed, to substantiate my fee because I was too tired from the day job. And so I just got to the point where it was like, it has to be one or the other. I choose to be an entrepreneur, and I don't have any entrepreneurs in my family. I think my grandfather worked for a cab company when I was younger, and then he started to do it on his own, but that's about it. Like it wasn't a company. Like he started to do it on his own. It was just him. Like he would come into town, drive his cab, and then he would go back home. He lived out of state, and he would go back home, and that was it. So it wasn't like he built a whole business around it. It was just kind of like some cash on the side. So I had no one to look up to, no one to fall back on, no one to ask advice, which is why I had hired the coach, because I was like, there's so much stuff that I don't even know. But it was really just the point of, I can't keep burning the candle at both ends of the stick like this. It just wasn't working anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, there's so many that are like, that's just a real comment, right? It's something gives, something has to give at that point. And you're right. Y'all are, you have to choose to do what your passion is. I agree with you. So let me ask you both this question that came in on Facebook, which is, how do you go about building your clientele? Both of you talked about, how much trust is a part of the relationship in financial planning, advising, management. How do you build your clientele? Because you're not like, you're right. You're in a different niche. You're not like a barber, or you're not like more like into a lawyer, right? So how did you go about building your clientele? Antwone and then Sherrell?
Well, basically, when I launched the business, I had a very stringent non-compete agreement. So I couldn't solicit any of my former clients. But if they came to me of their own volition, that was their decision. I mean, you can't control what clients do. So, I mean, I launched, it really was just faith. I said, I've done a really great job and I do have a track record. So I went from managing a lot of money to managing zero. And some people found me. Some people found me initially. And then I got referrals from those clients and then just continued to grow it from there. I continue to do a lot of educational outreach, which is it's not an immediate payoff. But if you're adding value, I guess the focus that I've always had is just continue to add as much value as possible. I guess kind of summarize it. Add value where you are now, add value in areas where you may not get an immediate payoff. You have to have that buffer so that you can have the runway so that you can start to see the fruits of those efforts. And then I would put information out on social media. It was free and I kept doing it. And then people knew what I did. And every time someone thinks of something financial, they ask me, and whether they're potentially a good client or not, I'll take my time and answer the questions. And then that starts to just pay off. It's like a kind of a cumulative effect. But at the beginning, you know, it's a challenge, it's a headwind at the beginning, of course. But you know, once you get over the hump in this particular industry, it's the opposite. There's too many people calling you because you don't have time to deal with them all. But it takes time to get to that critical point, and then the opposite starts to happen. So
no, really good point of adding value. I think that's a really great way to frame it, of adding value in all these different places, almost seeding your business, right? You seed in all these different places, not knowing where something will take root, not knowing where the tree will grow, not knowing if it's falling on great soil or fine soil or not. But seeding it. You want to add something to Antwone?
It has to be coming from a sincere place, though.
That's right. It
has to be sincere. It can't always be with this ulterior motive. I mean, I have a minimum as far as the size of clients that I'll take, but I tell people if someone has some questions, I don't care who they are. I'm going to try to find, if it's just a couple of minutes, I want to get them that information as best I can. And if you do that, and it's sincere, if you do that sincerely, it comes back and it pays off. So.
No, great point you just made. Sherrell, how about you? How do you go about building your clientele?
So I did pre-COVID, a lot of networking, just like in-person networking at events, being around people and being introduced to other people. But a big part of my growth came from I was doing QuickBooks training for the Small Business Development Center. And so through my networking, I had met the woman who was responsible for the education and planning for the small business development at an event. And she was looking for a QuickBooks person. And she was like, "Oh, I need you." And I was like, "Here I am." And so it kind of took off from there. And I did that for a good 2 to 3 years, like consistently. And I was doing them in College Park. And then eventually they started to have me do them also in Baltimore at the University of Maryland at Baltimore. And I did that. And my whole goal was to just teach people how to use QuickBooks, because from the clients that I had, you know, it was always issues of trying to fix things and clean up because people were trying to, you know, do it on their own. And so I started to, you know, I've always one of my core values is share the wealth. And so part of that is, even if I am your person doing your books and managing your books, you still need to know how to do certain things as a business owner. That's always been my goal. So you need to know how to run a financial statement. You need to know how to create an invoice, writing a checks for those who do insist on still writing checks, you know, recording the deposits and so forth. And so part of my training was, this is how you use QuickBooks, but these are the key things you should know how to do as the owner of your business. So if I'm on vacation, you're not stuck because I'm not available. And so that's kind of how it is. So it's just teaching people and educating people. And through that, I got referral. You know, I got businesses because they would come to the class, and at the end of the class, they would say, "Yeah, no, I don't want to do it." So can you do it? And so it kind of grew from there. So I always say, like, talking, speaking, educating, sharing knowledge is always a big part of how I get business.
No, that's really important. And both of you stressing like the intent it comes through, right? So the work that why you're doing it, where you're planting your seeds. Let me ask you this question, which came through because you both just talked about you are giving advice. We received this question from some folks watching, which is, when should people start investing? And we know optimally probably when you should start investing. But there are people at different stages and phases of their lives. So when should you start investing? And then I have a follow-up that one of our small business owners, thank you for that question. Don't worry, I'm going to get to it. When they want to ask about for small business entrepreneurs, how they should be thinking about this. But when should people start investing? So for the individual, Antwone, birth, 6 months before birth.
Right. There's like a tiny proverb that says the best time to have planted a tree was yesterday. The next best time is right now. So, you want to start investing as soon as possible. If you waited too long, start right now, because the best asset you have on your side is not picking out the right stock or the right investment. It's the time value piece. It's the compounding over time. So just the matters of fact around investing are that the corporations are very greedy, and there's some very smart people around the world that are constantly trying to figure out how to make money. So basically what you're doing when you're investing is saying that you want to put yourself on the same side as these people that are thinking about making money day in and day out around the world all the time. So you want to definitely be diversified, but you want to get money into investments, longer term investments right away. And you want to continue to do that systematically. So the best time to do it is right now.
Any amendment to that, Sherrell?
No, I agree 100%. Like, it's never too late. And, you find people are feeling like, oh, I didn't do this then, so I can't really do it now. But I say, like he said, do it now, and try to set aside money for that. Like, we've all heard, when you get a job, set aside the little 10% here, or put it in another bank account so you don't even see it. But you can also set that up with your, for investments, like set that money to the side and actually go out and actually do it. Like, don't just say, I'm going to do it. I'm gonna, or, I have people who I know are just like reading the stocks and following up, but they're not actually taking action. You have to actually move forward in order for you can't wait. And then they're like, oh, so-and-so made all this money because they acted and you waited. So you have to actually do.
No, absolutely. This question came in from one of our small business owners, which is, how should they go about starting to manage their finances, and how should they think about like setting things up? Should they, what tips would you give them as they're listening and thinking about, maybe I didn't do something, and maybe I missed an opportunity. How do you start? Is really the question in managing your finances. Any tips, or Sherrell?
Because I don't know who the person is or what stage they're in.
Don't worry, I'm gonna send them to you.
The very first thing I would say, if they don't already have their own business bank account, have a business bank account. A lot of small business owners start out with trying to run it all through their personal bank account, which is actually technically illegal, but they try to run it all through their personal business account, and then they're mixing business money with personal money and vice versa. So the very first thing is always make sure you have a separate business account and that only business expenses are running through that. If you need to take distributions or draws to help support your life, that's fine. Do it in a structured manner, but definitely set up a business bank account. Unless your business is doing accounting and bookkeeping, you should hire an accountant or bookkeeper, because you need to be focused on getting the sales and getting the business to grow, or making your product, or whatever the case may be. The money and how to manage it you should need to let somebody else kind of help you along the way and make sure you're doing things correctly and in the right way. Definitely seek professional help in trying to determine the structure of your business. Should you be there's all these things out there about LLC versus S Corp, and there's a lot of wrong information out there. So I would say definitely seek a professional before we are trying to decide, should you be an LLC? Should you be an S Corp? Don't just be an S Corp because somebody said it, because there are requirements that come along with that you may or may not be able to meet. But if you're going to hire, remember that there's a very fine line between employee and contractor. And so if they are in fact an employee, meaning you dictate when they work, how they work, what they use to work, then they are an employee and should be treated as such. Don't just hire them as a contractor because you want to try not to pay payroll taxes, because in the end, it will hurt you in the end. If the IRS finds out, it is not a pretty picture at all.
No. As an employment attorney, I made a lot of money off of people who didn't classify people correctly. So I can definitely vouch for the fact that not classified people, you pay a little bit to get the right advice. You pay a lot to get rid of
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the last tip I would probably say is have some sort of schedule. So, as a business owner, you shouldn't be looking at your numbers once a month. You should know what's happening, not just kind of keeping it all in your head. So make sure you set aside time. If you are going to try to do it yourself, set aside a time on your calendar, just like everything else. Every first Saturday of the month, you're going to go through and record all the transactions and reconcile the account. If you hire a person, then set up a scheduled time to meet with them and actually go over the information in those statements to make sure that you understand what is actually happening. Because a lot of times a business owner may think their business is doing something when it's actually doing something the opposite, or it's not doing as well. Or we always get the question of, it says I made all this money, but I don't have any money in the bank. And it's because you don't understand the flow of the financial statements and how they work, and you're only looking at one instead of two. So definitely set aside the time to make sure that you stay on top of things, and don't wait until February 1st because you got to file your return by March 15th.
No, such good advice. Antwone, do you have anything to add on that point?
I guess I would say there's money spent and there's money well spent. So if you go and launch a business, understand that you have liability exposure, et cetera, and you make sure, I know at the beginning it's tough because your cash flow is kind of tight. Make sure all of your insurances are up to date and that they're adequate to protect you and your family in the event that there's some kind of error, or somebody's injured on your property, or whatever kind of business you're operating. Make sure that your insurance is where it needs to be. Also, typically, if you read about how you should structure your finances, you'll see that you should have emergency funds. And typically, we would recommend, as a rule of thumb, if you're married or in some kind of partnership with two incomes, then you would have 3 months of expenses in reserve. If you're single with a steady paycheck, it's 6 months. But as an entrepreneur, your income can be very volatile. So you need to even have more of reserves on the sideline to help get you through inevitable slow periods or times when things aren't working out quite like you anticipate, so that you can kind of weather that storm. Or otherwise, you could implode the business at any given point in time before it would be necessary. And then also, I see a lot of small business owners are not taking advantage of a lot of the tax breaks that are available. So because you are operating a small business, there are certain types of retirement accounts that you're eligible for, irrespective of how much money you're making. And you can put away money and get a tax break for contributions to these accounts. Some people say, hey, I don't have the cash flow. Well, it doesn't have to come from cash flow. So if you're operating a business, you can move money that is in, say, a savings account, put it into a retirement account. So you're basically moving your own money from bucket one to bucket two, because you put it into a retirement account. That contribution gives you a tax deduction. And so these things are things that you should be taking advantage of. But oftentimes I see people may not be aware of what's available to them. They're not taking advantage of things like that. So, again, without knowing the particular person that asked the question, those are some general things that I would say to be aware of.
Great points both of you just made. And I think not the things you don't know, and that gap could save or break you. And so, really being able to have your, expertise of like Sherrell and Antwone, really critical. So this question came in, which is, I guess people are wondering about how they've shifted their businesses during the pandemic. Were there any shifts for you all during the pandemic? And how did you deal with that as business owners? Sherrell and then Antwone?
Honestly, I did not have a huge shift. I did have a slight shift as a result of clients having shifts. So we did lose, but in the grand scheme of things, we only lost 3 clients.
Wow.
One was a pretty big one, but we in the end we only lost 3 clients as a result. And and it wasn't because they didn't try to pivot. Like, I think in 2 cases it happened almost instantly, because they were working with corporations, and when everybody shut down, the corporations cut off any funding that they were giving to contractors so that they could pay their employees. And so it was, for them, it was like immediate. We didn't even have a time to think because it happened before we knew it. But what I was saying like all during the time is, as a business owner, you always have to quote unquote be on the swivel. Like, you have to be ready to switch up, change, maneuver, get more creative about how you do things, what you do, what you offer, how you offer it in order to keep going. Unfortunately for some business owners, they weren't able to shift as quickly, but you have to like always be figuring out ways to do it and take advantage of there were tons and tons of opportunities for business owners to get access to money, but everybody was so focused on the government piece that they weren't paying attention to all the other other opportunities that were out there. And so there was, for a long time, there was still money left on the table because nobody was applying for it, because everybody was focused on these 2 items, right? They were just focused on the PPP and the EIDL, but there was tons of other things out there. And like PayPal gave out money, there were all kinds of organizations that gave out money. So, when it comes to cash flow, like, look for all the ways that you can find the money. Don't just rely heavily on one thing. And that was probably the biggest lesson I think a lot of businesses, especially in the service business space, learned, is that you need to have a diversified business revenue coming in. You need to diversify, just like you do in finance, in investments. You need to diversify how you're getting income in, whether it's, we had some clients whose government was their only client. And so that hurt them a little bit. But the clients who had some government, some corporate, and some private, like, they were able to still kind of get by and not feel the crunch so much. So my biggest tip would probably be, be creative. Don't be afraid to be creative. I think we've all learned that during COVID, and make sure you have multiple streams of revenue to come in that fit your business. Like, don't just be, I do hair and now I cook and now I do accounting. Like, no, it needs to kind of make sense in a sense, but make sure that it, diversify the way that you're getting income in to help kind of keep you sustain things moving forward.
Yeah, no, great points. And Antwone, you talked about you've ridden the wave, the valleys and the peaks of different crises. And COVID-19 is just one in a series. So how has it impacted your business or shifted your business?
It's kind of paradoxical, but when things like that happen in the finance industry, in my industry, it actually is good for business, because when the markets are just going straight up, everyone thinks they're a genius and they don't need a financial advisor. But when people start to realize, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, then they reach out, I need some help here, I'm losing all my money. And then so they want to engage financial advisors. I think the way it impacted me was really, I had some changes to staffing, because I had to shift the business to be entirely virtual. So some of my support people, we had to figure out how to secure them and have them support remotely, which I was never inclined to do for security reasons. So I had to kind of shift from that perspective. But during the height of the pandemic, I was working like crazy just trying to figure out what the next steps were, because everything was so unprecedented. To Sherrell's point, I mean, things can happen out of the blue that you're just not thinking about, or you're just not prepared for. So you have to be extremely flexible. I think what's important also is that one of our initial points is doing something that you love. So you're going to have stress points, et cetera. When you're running a business, it's inevitable. But if you're doing what you love, you're kind of designed for that kind of stress. So there's certain types of stress that I simply can't tolerate. But stock market stress, things like that, which kind of throws other people for a loop. I'm built for that, because I'm like, all right, this is not my first rodeo here. So let's buckle down to start with the leadership, reaching out to clients more frequently, getting the information, condensing the information, making it palatable for people, and guide them through that process. There's a lot of work and things involved. So you had to step everything up. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be able to rise to that challenge.
No, really good points that you just made. And you're right. When the market is good, you probably get, everyone's going on, they're doing their own thing, but at times get tough, you realize like, oh, I'm going to lose everything.
Nobody's asking me about Bitcoin now or marijuana stocks now. No one's asking me about any of that anymore. So.
I mean, we might get a question because you just said Bitcoin, and that always gets right. Gonna get us a question right now. It just started it. Now the whole conversation is gonna be about Bitcoin for the rest of the conversation. No, so this question has come in, which is, what is the most challenging part about being in your industry? Is there like a thing that people wouldn't realize that is, a really challenging part about being in the financial planning industry? Antwone, you thinking about it?
I mean, for me, it's just the regulations. I mean, it's just very stringent regulations, which like today, the thing that happened with Russia, I wanted to get something out to my clients, but I have to submit it to an entity that reviews everything from a regulatory perspective before I can get it out to my clients. So then there's always a lag and just things like that. It's a highly regulated area, which can be daunting.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that. Just how much regulation, everything, you can't even post on LinkedIn and social media in the same way as other people can, other businesses can. Sherrell, how about you? What's the thing other than the regulations? Anything else you would say people would find is challenging for your industry?
I wouldn't say it's challenging, but what I would say is I think people downplay, or people don't understand all that it takes to do accounting and bookkeeping. So we do accounting and bookkeeping, and a lot of people feel like bookkeeping is just data entry, like somebody is just, and there's, you can Google it and it'll be like that person is just entering numbers. And the industry is trying to change that narrative, because it's not just data entry, it's not just bookkeeping if you have a good person. In some instances, yes, it is the person just keying in the information, but in other instances, it's not. And so we're constantly trying to let people, position ourselves, that people know that we're not just doing bookkeeping, we do full accounting. So analysis, cash flow management, all of that. It's not just entering in transactions and then, as someone said earlier, throwing financial statements over the wall. We're actually looking at the information, analyzing it, and helping business owners use the information to actually do things in their business the right way. And so it's just a misconception that bookkeeping it's the undervaluing of it. It's a constant discussion on, oh, it's just bookkeeping, it shouldn't cost that much, or, it's just data entry. And it's like, but it's not, because the premise behind it is accounting compliance and knowing generally accepted accounting principles and how to apply that. And you can't just pick that up off the street. Like, you have to know how that works. And so it's just the constant education. And I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but it is something that is consistent and happens often.
Absolutely great. And I studied a little bit of accounting, barely a bookkeeper. So I know that it is more than a notion. It's not data entry.
Yeah, and every situation is different, right?
Yeah,
every client is different. Like, they teach you textbook one way, And then you get a client and you're like, wait a minute, they didn't teach me that, you know? And so the base is there, the basics are there, but every client, every situation is going to be different.
Absolutely. So we've been able to confirm that Oprah's watching. Somebody from her team is watching. So we're gonna claim that. What can investors, what can individuals who are looking at you two shining stars in the financial planning industry, shining stars in the accounting industry, and saying, what can I do to support, to ensure that there are more Sherrell and Antwones thriving in our community, thriving as business owners, as business leaders? What can we do from the external standpoint? So what do you say to people, like little me? What do you say to people like Oprah? What do you say to all of us, the people who are in between, people that are just looking here today, very inspired by what you do, but thinking about how can I support you? What are the one or two things that we can do? Antwone and then Sherrell?
Well, I would say if you're thinking about launching any,
I can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Don't worry. I'm coming back to you. I'm going back to you. Oh, we can hear. Oh, they can hear you. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. So
what
I was saying is, as you're thinking, whatever industry you're launching into, think very clearly about the buying decision from your customer's perspective. What process is your customer going through to make the buying decision? You should be speaking to prospective customers before they're your customers. So use your network, talk to some people. I spent quite a bit of time talking to people about how they make financial decisions, how they decide to hire a financial advisor, what process they're going through. From understanding that process, you're able to, one, understand how you need to present yourself. If you do not have an attractive offering, once you understand the buying process, then you can start to build those skills. You can start to make it so that you are more of an attractive option. And you need to make it so that when you present, it's very clear that you're able to check all these boxes off and that you are the right person for them to hire in this particular situation. Now, some of you may be launching a business with a very simplistic buying process, and that's fine, but it may be a more involved process. Just understanding that is critically important.
Excellent. Sherrell, what's your one or two pieces of advice?
Don't be afraid of the numbers, because it's not rocket science. That's one of our core values too. It's not rocket science. It's just math. It's not even complicated math. It's just math. Take the time to look at your financials. The advice that I would give to someone is to take the time to look at your financials on a regular basis. Whether you hire somebody or if you're not hiring somebody and you're trying to do it yourself, then set aside the time to do it. If you are hiring someone, then make sure you set time to actually go over the numbers to make sure that it all makes sense versus waiting until the end. For those who are looking for a new venture, then I would say, get the proper training and education that you need to start whatever business idea you have and whatever you want to do, like do the background, do the due diligence. Don't just jump in, know the expectations of it. And if Oprah's calling, I say, hey girl, call me. Cause I got,
that's right.
I got plenty of ideas jumping off, but yeah, do the due diligence. And if entrepreneur is not for you, it's okay. Because I know a lot of people, sometimes we get into business and then at some point you're like, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. But you feel like you're in this rut that you got to keep going because you can't just stop because it's okay if it doesn't work. You can go back and get a job and then maybe try again later, or maybe, everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur because entrepreneurs need employees. So it's okay if you try it and it doesn't work. At least you know that you tried it. And to Antwone's point, you can, at the end of the day, not feel regret because you didn't even try.
That's right. Absolutely. And let me make sure people know we've gotten this question a couple of times in chat. How do we get in contact with them? Do not worry. We have put all of their information in the chat on Zoom, but we've also put it on Facebook, and it will be on our website, on Johns Hopkins website, so you can get in contact with both Antwone and Sherrell to follow up from this conversation. Let me ask you both this question. I'll give it to you. Okay, Sherrell, rattle off. You're for those who are listening on the phone, I forget about you all. I'm sorry. I don't forget you. I don't forget you. I just realize you're not seeing what I see. So what's your website and what's your social so people can follow you?
So the website is nitrumfinancial.com, and Nitrum is just Martin backwards. So if you can flip Martin, then you can spell Nitrum Financial. I play a lot on Instagram and Twitter at Sherrell T Martin. You have to put the T to find me, because Sherrell is a more popular of a name than I knew growing up. But you can find me on Instagram. I am on Facebook as well, but you can find me at Sherrell T Martin.
Excellent, excellent. Antwone, how do people get in contact with you? How do they follow up with you?
Best way, just Google my name, Antwone Harris, Harris, and I'll pop up. My website is platinumbridgewealth.com.
Excellent, excellent. Next, last thing, it might be our last question. What is next for you both? What's the next big thing we should be on the lookout for? What's the next big thing that you're thinking about for your business, or thinking about offering, or thing that people should be looking out for? Sherrell and then Antwone.
So we have a program, Rock the Books Online is the program, and it's basically, out of COVID, a lot of people started new businesses and started new ideas. In addition to that, within the accounting industry, there is and probably in other industries as well, it's challenging trying to find good people, good quality employees. And I've heard a lot of stories how people start bookkeeping businesses because they think it's easy, not because they like it, but because they think it's easy. And sometimes they, get the training and education and move on, and sometimes they don't. And so Rock the Books Online is a certification and training program that I created for people who have never done accounting, you don't have a degree, it's just something you happen to like numbers, or it's something you're kind of being forced into in a family business, or whatever the case may be, but it's something that you are interested in learning and wanting to do to potentially start your own business, or maybe even just to, get a job in a different industry than what you may have worked in the past as a result of COVID kind of causing some stress on you. So it's a certification training program. It's called Rock the Books Online. We are creating, we're doing we did a soft launch last year, but this year we're doing a bigger launch early summer. So if you follow me, you will be one of the first to get in on the know.
All right, Rock the Books. I love that. I love that title. Love it. Antwone, how about you? What's next big thing for you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, one of my big areas of focus is really giving back in the African American community and getting financial information in our community. As through Platinum Bridge, my clients are diverse, and many of my clients don't necessarily look like me. And as I mentioned, I have a pretty high minimal, and that takes a good chunk of the population out of being eligible for me to work with them directly, but I still want to get the information out. So I've launched a separate brand. I'm in the process of actually launching this in full scale. It's called New Greenwood Ave. Yeah, and it's basically, I've been trying to get this launched it's been 2 years, basically. I just been so busy, but the focus is really putting out free information around finances, investing, building multi-generational wealth, specifically target for the African-American community, and it's all free. And so I'm working on getting all this stuff launched and executed and getting that information out in the community. So that's what's
really exciting. That's really, really, really exciting. Very, very exciting. Let me say this. Both of you have been amazing today. It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you both. I have been huge fans of both of your work. So I know many watching have as well. So just wishing you both continued success, but also many of us will be in touch with both of you about ways to help. Let me give a couple of announcements and then I'm going to close us out. I feel like I'm like 30 seconds from not being on time, so I'm good. Announcement of the week. Next week, tune in. We're going to be talking all about fitness. Listen to this. We're going to have Angela Jennings of Boombox Boxing Club and Stacey Roach of Urban Fitness. You probably seen both of these women. They are like superstars. Come and listen for both of them. You do not want to miss that conversation. Follow us at JH Connects on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Email feedback to jhconnects@jhu.edu. We want to thank our partners, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Health System, Hopkins Local, the Mayor's Office of Small Minority Women-Owned Business, the Warnock Foundation, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Thank you, Antwone. Thank you, Sherrell. It has been a pleasure so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Many blessings.
Welcome.